Good evening and welcome to the Week in Review. I'm Paris Schutz. We'll be joined by our Week in Review guests in just a moment, but first, some of today's top stories. Chicago Public School classes are canceled yet again for Monday. CPS made the announcement this afternoon saying they'd be called off, barring some major breakthrough in negotiations with the Chicago Teachers Union. Meanwhile, a handful of schools were open today as a small percentage of staff showed up. One was Thorpe Elementary, seen here on the south side, which allowed students to come in if they agreed to take regular COVID-19 tests. And confusion today surrounding state assistance for CPS. Reports earlier today claimed that the state had offered help in the way of tests and masks for schools, and that CPS had not taken the state up on its offer. CPS officials have disputed that, and all this comes after Tuesday night's vote from the Chicago Teachers Union not to teach in person due to COVID concerns. Today, CTU members held a rally reiterating calls for CPS to do more to mitigate the risk of COVID exposure in schools.
Less than half of Latinx and Black children in the city are vaccinated. That's why we are demanding safety for our students.
And Chicagoans can expect somewhat of a reprieve from the frigid cold in the near future. The city woke up to single-digit temps this morning with wind chill values well below zero, but it didn't stop some brave souls seen here from venturing out along Chicago's lakefront for a stroll or for a run. The thermometer is expected to rise a bit overnight and reach as high as 33 tomorrow, with forecasters expecting a wintry mix of precipitation, which has caused the National Weather Service to put a winter weather advisory in place. And now to our Week in Review panel. Joining us are Kate Grossman of WBEZ, Lynn Sweet of the Chicago Sun-Times, Evelyn Holmes of ABC7 Chicago, and Greg Pratt of the Chicago Tribune. We welcome all of you to this panel, and let's get it rolling with Mayor Lightfoot. She appeared on this show last night. Take a look at what she had to say about the standoff with the teachers union about in-person learning.
Legal action obviously is always an option, but the best option is to work collaboratively, but get kids back in school because the schools are safe. That's the safest place for them to be. And that's the best place where they can learn in a nurturing environment.
Greg Pratt, the mayor, is saying tonight that school will be canceled Monday unless there is some kind of breakthrough with negotiations. Roll the dice here. What are the odds of a breakthrough and an agreement?
Well, it's 50-50, but it doesn't feel good. It's a very tough situation. It's a very fluid situation. Once they figure out what they're going to figure out on testing and on the rules to reopen, they have the other problem of, are they going to pay the teachers for these 3 days that CPS canceled classes, which is going to get heated and it's going to be a dispute. So I'm not sure that they can figure all that out over the weekend. In fact, I would guess that that's unlikely, but we'll see.
And Mayor Lightfoot is saying they must wrap up over the weekend. Kate Grossman, they're far apart on the issue of testing, on masks, on metrics for shutting classrooms and schools down. We're obviously not at the negotiating table, but any progress on any of these?
Well, I think the good news is there's not a ton of issues, so that's helpful for all of us who are waiting for our kids to go back to school. One of the big issues is this metric, like when do you shut down a school? And they seem to agree that it shouldn't ultimately be citywide shutdown, that it should be individual schools. There should be a metric for shutting down individual schools. So it's a matter of how do you decide that? And then there's this question of how much testing. Everybody wants more testing, and CTU is demanding that kids should have to, and adults should have to have a negative test before they return to school. Now, getting that done, you don't turn that on a dime, right? You can't get, 300,000 kids tested and adults and then open schools on Monday. So if the school district were to agree with that, there's pretty much no way you could reopen on Monday.
There's this whole issue of opt-in versus opt-out. Mayor Lightfoot is saying, well, parents should have the ability to, or should have the responsibility to opt in. That's the opposite position the union's taking. I want to get back to testing in a second, but Evelyn Holmes, this news came down really late on Tuesday night that classes would be canceled. How difficult has this been on families throughout the city that are dealing with rising COVID cases, having to figure out work, childcare?
It's a disaster. One woman I talked to, one mom said she said it was stressful, but you can look in these parents' eyes and that they just are exhausted from the pandemic. They're exhausted from trying to navigate everything and keep everybody safe, including themselves and their households and their kids. They're exhausted dealing with this remote learning. They're exhausted with the hybrid models. They're exhausted with this. So when the first class or day was canceled, the issue there was they had these safe haven locations, but a lot of those weren't up and running. They just weren't. So you had parents going to daycares. Some of those daycares had been shut down because of COVID cases. You had parents trying to go to aftercare. It was ridiculous. It was just ridiculous. And parents are just at this point feel as though they are caught in the middle. Matter of fact, I'll drop this and then I'll let you move on. One pastor from the West Side that I spoke to said it was like this African proverb that he heard about. He said, when two elephants fight, it's the ground and the grass underneath them that lose. He said, right now, the kids are the grass and the ground underneath.
Yeah, an apt analogy right now. Lynn Sweet, President Biden shares the mayor's belief that kids across the country should be in school right now. And the White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki weighed in on it this week. Is there any notion that there'd be federal help, especially in the way of testing, coming to CPS?
Well, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki was asked about this at 2 briefings this week. The Education Secretary Cardozo actually called the Chicago school chief and the top leader of the union in Washington to see what he could do. And it turns out not that much. There is vast amount of resources that have come to the city through the American Rescue Plan. And there's not, if by this you mean, can I tell our viewers we're going to get some magical delivery of something that can help end this? The answer is no. The theory of keeping schools open in reality in Chicago is not playing out. And for the moment, it's not a situation that the White House can meaningfully help resolve.
And back to the issue of tests, Kate Grossman, there were reports earlier today that Governor Pritzker, the state, had wanted CPS to take them up on the SHIELD test, which the University of Illinois developed. CPS did not go that route. Why not? And what's at the center of this dispute over testing?
Well, so we talked to SHIELD Illinois today, which is this, this test that was developed by University of Illinois, which is in place in about at least 1,700 school districts and colleges around Illinois. The school district put out an RFP this summer, and U of I put a bid in, but they were not chosen. CPS chose some other vendors. But now SHIELD Illinois is saying they're ready to help and they have capacity. They said they could add another school district, meaning Chicago Public Schools, and they're offering to help. So we'll see if CPS is going to take them up on that and how quickly they could actually get something up and running. And it may answer also this question you raised before about this opt-in and opt-out. Mayor Lightfoot has been very adamant about not wanting to have an opt-out program. She says that it's imperative that parents affirmatively choose to have their kids have what she's calling a quasi-medical procedure, or I don't remember the exact language she uses, but basically that it's sort of an invasive medical event that happens to their kids and they should choose it. Now, just speculating, if it were a saliva test, which is what the U of I test is, maybe that's not as invasive. And so maybe that wouldn't, maybe parents would be more comfortable with
although
that.
At the same time, Greg Pratt, is the jury out a little bit in terms of how effective the SHIELD test really is? And isn't that a reason CPS used to not go that route?
I'm not sure why they went another route. I don't know. I think there's a ton of school districts using the SHIELD test, so whether it's effective or not, I think that a lot of districts feel that it is effective and that that's not an issue that they're worried about.
Evelyn Holmes, who do you think parents lay the blame for this on more? Is it the teachers union for calling this walkout from in-person learning at least at 11 o'clock on Tuesday, or CPS for the perception of perhaps not having a better plan in place?
From the parents I spoke to, they're blaming the district. They say, you know what? Teachers haven't said that they don't want to teach. They said they want to teach and be safe. A lot of the parents, especially the ones like out at Park Manor, you may remember Park Manor, that's a school out on the south side, right, that had 2 COVID outbreaks, one during the Thanksgiving break, another just before Christmas break. They were unable to get tests. to these kids. They were supposed to be passing out those tests. Remember those to parents so they could test and get them back in time. So when January 3rd rolled around, kids could go back to school. That didn't happen because there was quarantine. So the kids were not in the school. Parents didn't pick up the test. It was a royal mess. And parents, again, exhausted. And matter of fact, I think that what you're going to see is parents who can. You may start to see parents who can start moving their children to other educational options, Catholic schools, private schools, independent schools, just because it seems like everybody has their business right. And CPS doesn't seem to be able to get it together.
And this is a drumbeat we're hearing a lot more now, parents saying we just can't handle the tension and the stress and the disruption all the time. Kate, go ahead. You were about to weigh in.
I was just going to say, I mean, we've certainly talked to a lot of parents that are supporting the CTU and you know, want to be home or want remote learning, but there's also a strong contingent of parents that are really mad at the Chicago Teachers Union. You know, this is the third major labor dispute since the mayor took office, and they are laying the blame on the doorstep of the CTU, and they're saying the same thing you just said, that they're like, I've had it with CPS, I've had it with CTU, I'm moving to Catholic schools, I'm moving to the suburbs. So I think there's a real split. So, you know, there's people feel very strongly in both ways. A lot of people are mad at CPS, and a lot of people are mad at the CTU.
Yeah, whoever they're mad at, people universally are
saying
saying we can't deal with this.
Parents feel like they're caught in between, right? They feel like it's a squeeze play. Matter of fact, I have a 5th grader in CPS. She's been out of school for the last few days. She's going to be out of school Monday. What do I do?
How have you figured that out? You're still working. You're still on the street reporting.
I'm juggling.
Like so many parents. You've got firsthand experience of it. Lynn Sweet, is it a bit of a mixed message right now for the president, for Mayor Lightfoot to say schools are the safest place for kids when you see record COVID case hauls every day, at least in Chicago and Illinois? You see record hospitalizations, including child hospitalizations.
Is it a mixed message? No, I think the school thing is a carve out. It's not a matter of messaging. This has to do with, and I'll just say it briefly because I know we have a lot of other things to talk about tonight. This isn't just a one-off where all of a sudden the CTU and the mayor are at odds, as everyone's been saying. This is part of the ongoing saga here, and it's not a matter of messaging or anyone else. It's just a matter that City Hall and CTU can't make these deals to keep the schools open. And I think maybe it's useful just to look at it this way and not in any larger national context for this problem, except that if you look at the right wing of America, they are using the closure of the nation's third largest school district as an example of Democratic-run cities not being able to function. And that's where, in the larger picture, you see some damage to Democrats.
Yeah, a lot of this does become politicized. All right, Lynn Sweet, you mentioned we do have to move on to some of the other stories, including the commemoration of the one-year anniversary of the insurrection. And as the country marked that anniversary, President Biden laid the blame at the former president's feet. Take a look.
We didn't see a former president who had just rallied the mob to attack, sitting in the private dining room off the Oval Office in the White House, watching it all on television and doing nothing.
Lynn Sweet, take us to this commemoration yesterday on the House floor. What was that experience like?
Well, there was a whole series of events throughout the day marking the January 6th anniversary. I just want to quickly say that the Illinois and most of the news about it, Adam Kinzinger, who is the Republican who doomed his career because he joined the Democratic-led January 6th committee, he would have been on the House floor with Liz Cheney, who was there with her father, except that he's awaiting the birth of his first child any minute. And so he was not there. But there have been, this is the run-up to so many so many events marking this there, and certainly for people who were in the Capitol, especially the group called the Gallery Gang, of which Congresswoman Robin Kelly is one. The people who were in the House that day when the attack happened have a special bond, and they have been meeting regularly as part of that Gallery Gang to it.
And you mentioned Congressman Kinzinger not being there awaiting the arrival of his
Yes.
of his child. And he said this week pretty much all but ruling out any kind of run for Illinois, a statewide office, governor or senator. There's a lot of folks that believe he wants to use this platform to run for president, perhaps a potential primary matchup with the former president, Donald Trump, in the future. You get a sense that that's what he wants to do?
No, that's not why he's doing this. He just didn't close the door when he was asked about running for president. I think my analysis is that he, what a year plus ago was his crusade against conspiracy theories right after January 6th, morphed into his decision to start a crusade to take the Republican Party out of the iron grip of Donald Trump. That grip has only gotten stronger through the year, not weaker. And he would have had almost no chance anyway in a statewide primary. Not that the Republicans have found any Republican to run against Tammy Duckworth yet, the senator. He just has a national platform now to talk about election denial, trying to prevent Trump from running in 2024, and that's what he said in his next chapter he will do full time. Meanwhile, he's in the House for another year, and he's got a lot going on with that January 6th committee.
Right, and they probably need to put out a report on that in the next year before the midterms. Evelyn Holmes and Lynn, I'll get back to you on this in a second, but we heard this week the announced retirement of longtime Congressman Bobby Rush. What do you think his legacy is?
I think his legacy is one of trying to make government work for the people, so to speak. He brought a very grassroots approach from literally the streets based on his background. Anyone who knows Bobby Rush knows his background. His last few pushes, so to speak, about missing Black women. That's been something that he has championed in the last few years, along with obviously anti-lynching legislation and also voting rights. He's been there, 30 years?
Yeah, going on about 30 years.
Yeah, so between, you figure his health issues that he's had, maybe I don't even know why I haven't spoken with him, to be honest. I don't know how you maintain that legacy and move it forward. Right. I don't know how you do that.
And Lynn,
because
I know
I'm
you
not
spoke
sure
with
that anyone has the depth of the knowledge to be able to do that.
You spoke with him, Lynn. We spoke with him this week. But Greg Pratt, there's this intrigue in terms of who's going to be his replacement. Now you have 3rd Ward Alderwoman Pat Dowell entering the fray. How do you see this field of candidates shaking out?
Well, you only get one chance to replace somebody like Bobby Rush. You're not going to beat him, as Barack Obama found out. So you're going to run now, and we're going to get a circus primary with a whole bunch of people probably. And whether it's, who's going to win it, I don't know. In Dowell's case, she wasn't finding a ton of success in the Secretary of State's race. And, this is a more local race, which perhaps benefits her, but we'll see.
A lot of folks either getting in or thinking about getting in or rumored to get in. Lynn Sweet, there's no doubt about the civil rights legacy of Bobby Rush, but he also had numerous ethics and tax issues during his time in his office. Did that play into his decision to step down?
No. And by the way, the House Ethics Committee never. I think he was fined one time. But I want to he represents one of the most historic Black districts in the nation, one of the few districts that has consistently had Black members of Congress on it. And I think that is a point to remember when we talk about the first. It has a unique place in our city history. This was the district Harold Washington represented before he ran for mayor. So there are a few issues contributing, I think, to Bobby Rush's decision. He is an ordained minister. He wants to spend time in his ministry where he could be an activist and talk about his issues. His legacy mainly is as a civil rights leader and as a crusader against racial injustice. Wants to spend time with his grandchildren, he told me, so they don't read about him just knowing him from clips on TV or in a newspaper. And for a practical matter, under the new map, he has a big chunk of new voters, a new territory. That district, we might think of it as a South Side district, but actually 2 members of Congress represent the South Side, Congresswoman Robin Kelly and Bobby Rush. And then this district just runs all over downstate. almost as far south as Kankakee. It stops around Bourbonnais. So in this new map, he would have had to have done some work to have introduced himself to a bunch of new voters. He was never much of a fundraiser. His end of September FEC statement showed he only had $186,000 on hand. So this just seemed, in a sense, with the new map, his age, desire to spend to the grandchildren, and he has an active ministry he could go to. So he has, in a sense, a place to renew himself as he starts a new chapter as he leaves the House.
We should also mention he is a cancer survivor. And speaking of running for office, Greg Pratt, I think you mentioned this on Twitter, that it looks like Arne Duncan is in stage 2 of the potentially running for office thing. Stage 1 is deny, deny, deny. Stage 2 is like, well, lots of people are begging me to do it, and I'm not going to close the door on it. Well, what's his thinking right now?
Well, he's at the, I think I listed it as stage 3. I put 5 stages of reluctantly running for mayor. He's in the, I really don't want to do it, but people want me to do it. So, and then next step is I'm seriously thinking about doing it. And the step after that is I'm doing it. So I don't know where he is, but this is somebody, there's a whole slew of people out there, largely business interests that don't like Mayor Lightfoot. They want someone else. They want somebody that they feel comfortable with. Arne Duncan may be that guy, and we'll see.
And part of the complaints against Mayor Lightfoot, coming from the business community, are failing to get hold of crime. Obviously, we know that 2021 was the most violent year in terms of homicides since the mid-'90s, and then Cook County set a record in terms of homicides. So Evelyn Holmes, are you hearing anything out of the mayor and Superintendent Brown about getting a hold of this for 2022?
Well, they do have a plan for 2022. They don't want 2022 to be like 2021. They want, as the mayor said, she wants residents to not just feel safe, but be safe. So they are taking, they have finally acknowledged that they can't arrest their way out of it. They want to take an approach where they are providing and building relationships, providing services, mental health, wraparound services, job, education, things along those lines, in addition to reaching out, trying to recruit officers that may look more like the communities that they're serving. They want to have more positive interactions with community members. This, they say, is the approach that they hope to be able to put into place. But the issue remains trust. It's easy to say this, but is it going to work? You have to have members of the community, people that live in these neighborhoods, trust you. And we both know that there's a long, long history of distrust and what is perceived as mistreatment by the community from law enforcement.
Long been an issue. You also have a problem of trust between the police department and the mayor's office. Greg Pratt, there's been a constant canceling of days off for CPD officers. What has that done to morale with the CPD and their trust in their leadership?
Well, Chicago is absolutely in a crisis when it comes to violence and when it comes to the department itself, which is shrinking, which doesn't find there aren't enough recruits or candidates to replace the people that are leaving. And then officers are very upset because they're constantly having their time canceled and they don't get to see their families, and they're stressed. And, you know, they see horrible things every day as police officers. They just see horrible things, right? Murders, rapes, assaults, people at their worst moments. And they're having their time to decompress from that taken away from them. It's a real bad situation.
And how safe would you say Superintendent David Brown's job is at this point?
Well, the mayor, you know, if one of the surest ways to make the mayor angry is to suggest to her that she fired David Brown or that she's about to, because she has his back. And she gets on people's cases. You know, I've reported about she got really angry at Alderman Brendan Riley for calling the superintendent a moron. She's not positioning to fire him. She's very much got his back, and she defends him a lot. Now, it's an election year, and the politics are, you know, if crime continues to be bad, she's going to blame someone. And right now she's blaming the county. At some point, it may be the superintendent. But in reality, despite all the speculation, she really has his back.
And David Brown, of course, was her pick. It's almost like Ryan Pace and Matt Nagy. But that's a discussion for another time. We are out of time, so our thanks to Kate Grossman, Lynn Sweet, Evelyn Holmes, and Greg Pratt. And that's our show for this Friday night. Don't forget you can get Chicago Tonight and the Week in Review streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. And be sure to join us tomorrow night at 6 for Chicago Tonight, Latino Voices, and then immediately after that, Chicago Tonight, Black Voices at 6:30. You can also see the Voices program Sundays starting at 10 p.m. And then we're back at 7 o'clock all next week. And now for the Week in Review, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy and warm, and have a great weekend.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford